HRWize currently has 3 categories of workflows available for use. These are approval, continuous, and tasks. Task workflows are typically used for things such as onboarding and offboarding an employee. To create a workflow, we go to Administration, HR, Workflows, and then Workflows again. Here we can see a list of workflows we have created. We can click on the Add button to add a workflow, but in this session, we'll look at one of these workflows and click on the Edit action to take a look at the workflow we have created. So let's click on the Edit action for the new starter workflows. We gave this workflow a name and a category, which in this case is Tasks. The workflow type is also Task. In this case, the employee cannot trigger the workflow. And we have set to Yes, where this workflow will trigger against employees in probation. We have decided that our workflow will apply to all departments, sites, regions, and etc., both current and future. And at the end, we have set the workflow to active. So now we're going to click here, Workflow Steps, to look at the workflow steps in our workflow. So as you can see here, we have 5 steps. We'll take a look at each of in turn. First, we'll click on the Edit action for Step 1, Request Assets. We give the workflow step a name. Here we have added a description, including some system fields. We'll look at the system fields in more detail shortly. From our Type drop-down, we have selected Assign To, although, as you can see here, there are many options available to choose. Next, we have recipients. This can be, for example, to an individual, or as in this case, a group email box such as the facilities mailbox. Here we have added some information in our message subject header. We can add some system fields if required. And here we have our message content, which in this case also includes system fields. You can click here. If you want to see the system fields, you can use in the workflow name, description email subject, or message content. Instead of sending an email, if you click here, a notification email will be sent to the recipient or recipients linking to a secure page where will display the fields in the message content. Please note, though, that the message subject will be delivered as is, including any potentially sensitive content. And the workflow step order in this case, this is the first, so we enter 1. We decided that this step will happen 2 weeks before the start date of the employee. Although, as you can see here, there are other options you can choose from, and it will depend, of course, on what you want the step to do. If you choose the escalation option, then you can choose what will happen if the task has not been completed within the specified time frame. So you might escalate it, for example, to a manager. So 2 weeks before the new starter is due to start, HRWize users who are part of the facilities mailbox will receive a notification email telling them who is starting, when they are starting, and the assets they require. They can then click on the Action Now button to direct them to their HRWize system. In addition, any HRWize user that is also a member of the facilities group will see the Request Assets for the new starter in the Notice section. We can then click on this link and carry out the actions described in the workflow step. Add the completed date and any comments. and then click on Submit to finish. Now we return to our workflow again by going to Administration, HR, Workflows, and then Workflows again, and we'll take a look at the next step. But first, we'll take a look at the progress of our workflow. So we'll click on the List action. We can see here the progress of our new starter, Kevin Malone, is at 20%. We'll click on the View action, and here we can see the request asset, the first step of our workflow, is complete. Now we'll move on to step 2 of our workflow, prepare paperwork. We'll click on the Edit action for step 2. Step 2 is called Prepare Paperwork. The type is assigned to, and you can see there are many options depending on what you want the step to do. Our recipient this time are any users that are a member of the HR mailbox. We have added a message subject and a message content using system fields as required. Our workflow step order is 2, and just like in step 1, this workflow will trigger 2 weeks before the start date of the new employee. There are no escalation options, so we'll click on Submit to save the changes, or in this case, cancel because we haven't made any changes. This time, when the workflow is run, the HRWize users who are a member of the HR mailbox will receive a notification telling them that the paperwork is required for the new starter. They can click on the Action Now button to action the workflow step now. If we log in as a member of the HR team, in addition to the email notification, there is also a Prepare Paperwork action in their notices. We can click on this link or the one in the email notification to process this workflow step. Once again, adding our completed date and any comments. Then click on Submit to finish the workflow step. We'll return to our workflow again and check the progress. Now we can see that the workflow is at 40% progress, and both step 1 and 2 are completed. Now we're going to take a look at step 3 on our workflow. 1 week before the new starter's start date, the new employee's manager will receive an email notification telling them they need to prepare a desk for the new starter ready for their start date, and they can click on the link to action the workflow step now. And once again, they can click on this link or the link in the email notification to process the step. Since step 4 is pretty similar to our previous steps, let's just say that step 1, 2, 3, and 4 are now completed. So once again, we'll return back to our workflow and look at the final step. We're going to go ahead and click on the Edit action to see how it is set up. So once again, we have this step, a name, and we're going to send a new starter, a new form. And from our drop-down list of forms, we'll select the new starter other form. The recipient will be the employee who is our new starter. And once again, we can add some system fields as required. This time we'll select sensitive message. And the workflow step order is 5, and it will trigger 0 days after the start date of the employee. And here we have set some escalations. We'll send a reminder to the new starter if they haven't completed the form in 2 days. Then in 5 days, we'll escalate it to the manager. Now let's take a look at the form we're going to use to our new starter by going to Administration, Company, and then Form Builder. And here we can see our new starter form listed with the other forms we have created. Let's click on the Edit action. Here we can see the form has a name and its form type Other. The form is visible to employees, but we're not going to log form responses. Table display date field, form tag, and rotate download have very good explanations in the field tips for these three fields, so you can cover them here. Just like documents, you can categorize your forms, but here we won't select anything. The form will apply to all job roles, current and future. By default, other forms aren't accessible to HR and employees as manager, but you can override this by allowing other user groups to have access to this form. All forms are always visible to admin level users. Here you can choose if you want the form to be only usable in a workflow, but for now, we'll select No. And here we can choose to trigger a workflow on submission of this form. In this case, this form will be triggered by a workflow. And finally, we can choose to make this form active or inactive. Now we're going to click here, Build Form, and take a look at what the form actually looks like. We're not going to look at this form in too much details because that will be the subject of a separate session. But as you can see, there are lots of different fields you can add that will help the employee to fill out this form as comprehensive as possible. For each of the form elements, we have the Edit action, and this allows us to confirm, edit, or modify each of the form elements as required. So now let's take a look at what happens when step 5 is triggered. This time, it is the new starter that gets the email because we have set him to step 5. Please remember that this email contains sensitive content, so the employee must log in to complete the form process. After logging in, the employee can see the content of the sensitive email. On their home screen, the employee can also see under notices that they have a new hire form that they must complete. Clicking on this link on the notices, the employee can now go through and fill out the form as required. Once the employee clicks on Cancel, here the employee can click on the View Data action right here, where they can view the data from their completed form. And back to their home page, we can see that the notice requiring them to complete the new starter form is now no longer available under Notices section. The employee then clicks on Submit to complete the form, and you can see that the form has been successfully submitted. We'll return to our workflow again and check the progress. And now we can see that it is 100% complete. If we click on the View action, step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all shown as complete. To view the completed form, we can go to Forms. And as this is the only form in the system, we can click on the View Data action. And here, we can review the updated form and then update the employee's record using the data as required.